Here at Capcoder, we are delighted to introduce our new and revolutionary all-electric machine. Based on our best-selling Micro Mono, the Micro Mono E eliminates the need for compressed air to operate. And with options such as automatic bottle infeed, integrated filling, and automatic cap placement, it makes the Micro Mono E unique in the industry. Ideally suited for ultra-clean rooms wanting to eliminate any potential contamination of compressed air, or areas where compressed air is not available. The Micro Mono E requires only a standard 13-amp plug to operate. The all-electric version still excels anywhere from small batch work to high-output production. Capcoder are excited to demonstrate their best. The Micro Mono benchtop filling with unparalleled ease of use, flexibility, and a multitude of configurations. From fully manual to fully automatic operation, the Micro Mono truly does stand in a league of its own. Using the same control system as our flagship Mono, it allows us to incorporate sophisticated technology such as load cells, precision sensors, or tool transducers. It can be integrated with a number of different style fillers, and as well as standard capping, it can accommodate styles such as trigger sprays, press on, and even crimp cap. Originally designed for customers that have a frequent product changeover, the Micro Mono takes advantage of quick release tooling, meaning product changeover can take as little as 2 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Praveen Bhattara. Today we are discussing the green shoots. Green shoots sowing the seeds for new cannabinoid industry in UK. As we all know, the CBD itself is now expected to be around 690 million pound industry in UK by end of 2021. And what next? Can we have a sustainable growth? What do we need to do to have this sustainable growth? To discuss this, I've been joined by Elisa Ratliff, as well as Suzanne Evans. Elisa to discuss the industrial point of view, and Suzanne to discuss the political point of view. So to start our discussion, I would ask Alicia if you can please kindly give your introduction and a little bit about your industry, please.
Sure, absolutely. I'd like to start out with thanking, obviously, Cannabis Magazine, the ACI and the CMC for involving me in such an awesome platform and conference this year. So thank you very much. Thank you, Parveen, for chairing this panel. Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Ratliff, and I am currently serving as the Chief Scientific Officer for Jersey Hemp. I am an American native that was plucked from my side of the pond to come over and do some meaningful work here for Jersey Hemp. We are a vertically integrated cannabis-based company where we provide CBD products and hemp-based products. Because we are vertically integrated, we definitely have at our core scientific development, research and development, regenerative soil practices, and everything that we can do to consume the plant in a healthy manner and produce something that's going to be not only safe, but effective in your supplementation of your nutrition, or whether that's medicinal, whatever you're looking for, we are here to provide those needs. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity. My background is in chemistry, and I've spent the last 5 years in the cannabis and hemp space working in the American landscape and really watching what's gone on with legislation and legalization from state to state. And now they're talking about federal. So I think this is a fantastic panel to join, to see and help give a perspective from industry point of view on how the Green Shoots report and effectively Tiger will affect our market, and see how we can grow and create a sustainable market for everyone to play in that can produce great products. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Suzanne, if you can give your introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Parveen. Yeah, it's so exciting to be here doing a panel like this, because I think this is such an exciting, burgeoning industry. As Parveen said, it's worth the best part of £700 million in Britain alone. That market is obviously rising, but the amazing thing is it's all really happened by accident. I know the Green Shoots reports talks about this being an accidental revolution, and that's really what it is. Britain has somehow become, through most of your efforts, people such as yourselves, has become the world's second largest market, and yet it's been almost completely ignored by government. And this is my interest really as a director of Political Insight, which is a political and public affairs and public relations consultancy. This is an industry that's been completely ignored by government, despite the fact that it is such a growing industry. But clearly that's going to change. Sooner or later, the sector is going to start to attract attention. It is going to be regulated. And so obviously the key factor for product producers is to have a say in how that regulation shapes up, so that it enhances rather than depresses the market. So the key word, I think, is influence in terms of the political sphere. And that's what Political Insight is aiming to achieve in government on behalf of and by working with the ACI and the CMC. And I just wanted to go through, I think, what we see as being some of the key messages. And I think really we're talking about a very exciting post-Brexit, post-COVID era. And I think the main message has really got to be that we've got a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform the British cannabis extract sector into a global leader and innovator, to make the UK a centre of excellence, to establish an industry that has the highest quality products and which demonstrates exemplary ethical and scientific standards. There's a huge opportunity to create jobs in rural areas through farming, jobs through extraction expertise, and of course there's the obvious potential to improve the health and well-being of our population. We'll talk more, I'm sure, about the excellent recommendations that have been made in the Green Shoots report to try and establish and to achieve all this. But I think first and foremost for the sector, the most important thing is to distinguish it from the criminal marketplace. Now, because obviously you know a lot about the subject, you might find that an odd thing to say, but this is where we are right now, because the rules governing CBD medicines are not properly separated from criminal law on banned substances derived from cannabis. Both come under the auspices of the Home Office. And so a first step, as the Green Shoots report suggests, must be to persuade government to move responsibility for medicinal cannabis from the Home Office into the Department for Health and to DEFRA, which has responsibility for agriculture. Alicia mentioned the TIGA report, the Taskforce on Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform, which was commissioned by the Prime Minister to look at regulatory changes now we've left the EU. And I think it's very significant that TIGA recommended that regulation of medical cannabinoids and medical CBC should move from the Home Office to the Department for Health and Social Care and the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Authority. So we've got a bit of a head start here. In a sense, the door is already slightly ajar, and now is the time to push it open, I think, to unlock a paradigm shift and cut through the parliamentary bureaucracy in the political and legislative process. So I'll leave it there for now, Parveen. Happy to talk more about how Political Insight would propose doing this and to take any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's really interesting. We all agree that this industry is at the infant stages still, although it's having an unprecedented growth, but it's at infant stages because of the various challenges we have in this industry at the moment, as well as UK have now, as you mentioned, Suzanne, have an opportunity post-COVID, post-Brexit to carve the path for this exciting industry cannabinoid industry and take in charge and make the roadmap for us to work on that. And I think there's a great future for this industry. But the green shoot report written by the CMC and the ACI was only for that reason, to highlight what are the challenges we are facing. To have this sustainable industry, we have to overcome those challenges. And then what suggestions we can give to the government to overcome those challenges. So let's look at the challenges first. So I personally feel that there is biggest challenge is that in the government we don't have a visible cannabinoid expert who can actually carve this industry and assist in forming a sustainable industry in UK. What's your view on that, Suzanne?
Yeah, in a sense I agree, in a sense I don't, Parveen. I think there are certainly individual members of parliament who absolutely see the value of this industry, and I think will be very, very supportive indeed. But absolutely, you're right. I think parliament does need to have a formal body that is representing this industry, which is why we at Political Insight are recommending setting up an all-party parliamentary group on cannabinoids. And that's basically, it's not a group that will be a formal part of the legislative process. It is an informal group that will be joined by MPs, interested civil servants, the members of the public can attend, and we will set an agenda which basically explains the industry to people in parliament and in government who perhaps don't fully understand the implications of it at the moment. And the APPG, for short, will be a great opportunity to explore some of the issues around in the market, both from a regulatory point of view, from a practical point of view, from a health perspective. There will be an opportunity for producers and other interested parties to come and present to the APPG. And as I say, it's open to the public. And of course, that also means it's open to the press. And APPGs can be very effective in getting media coverage. So again, it's all part of this influence process to try and spread the word about these products, their efficacy, and the need for government to actually take them seriously and recognise their potential to the British market.
That's great. That's great. What's your view on that, Elisa?
So one, I am very excited about the Green Shoots report because I feel as if the first thing that we have to talk about with this is being able to define and identify what you don't know. And I think that the Green Shoots report has done a fantastic job at really highlighting a lot of the areas that the UK government may not know about. So that's going to be one of the biggest pushes, you know, specifically from an industry perspective. We need our regulators to be as educated in what this industry is so that they can properly regulate, and not only properly regulate the industry, but also set out the proper limits and different things when it comes to the cannabinoids, when it comes to full spectrum products, when it comes to different form factors and delivery methods, health and efficacy and benefits. All of those different things are still very gray areas for the UK. But I think the UK is in a prime opportunity, as you've mentioned, Parveen, to where we essentially have this blank canvas where we can paint a much more robust picture of a marketplace than our precursors, such as, you know, Israel has had a lot of growth with cultivation and research. You have the Netherlands that has dominated cannabis cultivation and has become a global exporter. You have the North American market that is essentially starting to shape up into a very sophisticated commoditized market. So because we are now starting to see some of these benchmarks within the industry, as a government body, we actually have some examples we can pull from and see what potholes we can go ahead and actually, you know, diverge from, and what opportunities we can take, you know, control of. I think that's really important. And the Green Shoots report did a fantastic job at highlighting the main challenges to the industry. One of the biggest ones, Parveen, is that lack of education. And I think for my side of things, it makes it quite prohibitive on what we can do as a producer to market our products, to be able to actually educate the population on what CBD does, how it affects your body, what are these therapeutic benefits. But but currently, because of law, we can't say anything. We have to keep our lips sealed and sell a product and essentially keep this, magic to ourselves. And it's unfortunate to the public. I think their awareness needs to be raised on both sides of the fence, on both the regulatory side to raise the awareness and educate our officials, but also the public as well, so that we can erase the negative social stigma that was put across this crop. I really think that's important.
Can I just comment on that if I may? I think that's so fascinating, Alicia. So obviously I'm not a cannabinoid expert. I'm a political expert, if you like. So I suppose like an ordinary person on the street, I decided to do a bit of research. So I went into my local branch of Holland and Barrett and I saw the CBD products on the shelves. And I thought it's very interesting. And I had a look and I thought, oh, I'll ask the sales assistant what they think. And I asked the question, I said, okay, so here's a shampoo and here's an ordinary shampoo. Why would you buy one and not the other? And to my astonishment, the sales assistant said, as you've just heard, I can't talk about it. I can't tell you anything. So they're selling stuff, but they're not allowed to actually explain anything about it to their customers. And to me, as just an ordinary person that wants to buy something, I find that absolutely astonishing. And so this is why actually getting these products regulated so that we can, as you say, tell people about the magic. A lovely phrase. I love that. That's why it is just so important. We're in a ludicrous situation now.
I agree. I think it was interesting to hear your both political as well as the industry point of view. But I really feel that both industry as well as the government need to have a real deep dive into this subject. Absolutely. So that we can actually spell that magic out, as Elisa said. So we can do that sparkle of cannabinoids that would be really, really helpful. That's really interesting. I think leading on from that, you both mentioned that there's a lack of education as well as there are certain things which industry body would like to do, but they can't do because of the lack of legal and regulatory clarity. So that is absolutely key that we can actually bring about those the magical products onto the market, have evidence-based data, have the innovation. But in order to generate that innovation, we need to have some regulatory and legal reforms for this industry to flourish. And what's your view on that from the legal perspective as well as from the regulatory perspective, Suzanne?
Well, I think, as the Green Shoots report said, and you've just mentioned it yourself, Parveen, that deep dive, a comprehensive governmental analysis of the sector is very important. And I think, that's got to be done via the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, or called BEIS for short. And I think they're also best placed, to do a study of the consumer cannabis oil product sector. And that is fundamental. We need to know, government needs to know what it's legislating about. It needs to get an understanding of what's going on. And that's where I think political insight, working with producers and people with an interest in this marketplace, can work very strongly together to make sure that we get those messages across. Because of course, in politics, it's certainly in Britain that the political process can be quite adversarial. And of course, there are going to be some people who, as you say, have got the wrong end of the stick, don't understand the sector, are worried that people are going to be taking these products and simply don't understand, they're going to be high on the streets or whatever it might be. I mean, there are these total misapprehensions, not talking about at a government level here. But it is important to be able to do this research. And it's important, I think, to be able to have a hands-on, proactive, supportive role in that research, because after all, who is the government going to talk to do its research? It's going to talk to people who are already involved in the industry. So it's about getting those messages out to government, and basically making sure that BEIS does its job properly, I suppose, in a nutshell.
Yeah. And Lisa, from the regulatory and legal perspective, the administrative burden which has been put onto the industry, how does it hinder your industrial progress in cannabinoid sector? Can you highlight those, please?
Absolutely. It's a huge impact, huge impact. So there's two main things that I think were highlighted just discussing the lack of legal clarity. The lack of legal clarity really is a hindrance for a processor because we end up in a gray area of not understanding if we're going to cross the line of compliance or if we're not. And that is always going to pose a risk to the consumer with the end product. So that right there needs to be mitigated right away so that we have safe products that we can say for sure with all certainty there's no issues. I definitely think there needs to be a body that is over drafting legislation and really building this regulatory framework over this sector. It cannot just be government officials who know nothing about the plant, who know nothing about the processes to get from oil inside the plant to bottle and what it takes to do that and how it actually affects you. So I think that there needs to be, similar to like what happened in the States, where every state that decided to legalize, whether it was medicinal, adult use, hemp-based only, whatever that was, there was always a cannabis control board or a cannabis commission or some sort of subsector or sub-department of government that was in control of all of those different regulations. And that body was typically made up of someone who has experience in policy making and law drafting, someone who comes from industry and understands the pain points and the challenges of regulations, and then someone who's in compliance and quality and understands health and safety, and also someone who is a clinician or a physician or someone who can talk to the biology and what we're actually consuming. So if you don't have that expertise talking to government, or at least bringing out what is going to be your regulatory framework, then it's going to be quite difficult to really put into shape what this legality should be. I have a great example of legal clarity that right now is very prohibitive. We have a blanket law or blanket legislation over classifying cannabis. Cannabis and hemp are considered the same thing. So as a hemp provider and hemp producer, I'm not touching anything that's high THC, but I'm held to the same standards as someone who is producing high THC as far as security, as far as my traceability and my documentation, all the inspections I have to perform. And we're talking money and cost at every single corner of these turns to try to become compliant. So that's one of those legal gray areas where cannabis versus hemp or high THC, high CBD needs to be clearly defined, because we're falling underneath these umbrellas that we're being over-regulated in an industry that we're not even touching. And that's very confusing. It's hurtful to a processor, and it's going to inhibit the industry movement forward.
That's a very interesting point, Elisa, that we are following the outdated laws and outdated regulations, outdated research, which is really, really hindering the innovation. And because of these outdated laws, we are not even able to start the R&D work on certain cannabinoids. For example, the psychoactive cannabinoids, until we go through all the appropriate licensing channels. At the moment, whether we are manufacturing the psychoactive cannabinoids or whether we want to do the R&D work, we have been held to a same standard of licensing purposes, and hence it is now putting extra burden onto the industry, which is prohibiting the progress and innovation in this sector. I'm sure you must be aware of that. And how do you think it is hindering the progress, especially in Jersey hemp? Why do you think we need the change, and we need the change now?
Well, we definitely need the changes now, because it is very prohibitive. So those laws and the legislation that was put in place years and honestly decades ago, we've evolved so far past If you look at Israel as a good precursor for research and what they've done, and as far as genetics and breeding, and specifically looking at the data compared to a specific genetic profile of cannabis and how that affects Crohn's disease or multiple sclerosis, those different things, we have evolved so far past, we're just going to put it into some sort of device and smoke it and get high. So I think that, the perspective has to change right now. It has to change that this is not a negative plant. This was never a negative plant. And it definitely needs to have its place in the medicinal marketplace as well as the health and wellness marketplace. What you've discussed too, with all of these challenges and hindrance and all of this outdated legislation, it's creating monopolies within this market already. Already, you're going to have specific producers that have the cash flow to go around each corner and shoot at each moving target, no problem. And that's going to force a specific price per gram on your product that now the consumer has to pay and they're responsible for. And then on top of that, you're creating a monopoly with your testing centers based on who holds licenses to actually hold and import and export controlled substances. And if there's only one or two in the entirety of the UK, then now as a processor, I'm paying 5 times the amount for full panel analysis that I would pay if we had a healthy market that was open and horizontal to all of the players. So I think that it needs to change rapidly so that we avoid creating monopolies within our market, and we avoid limiting the access for consumers to our products.
Agree. This is creating a lot of barriers to entry for the growing industry, and every industry body is facing the same way because they cannot progress because of the current legislations. And Suzanne, how can APPG help us in overcoming all those regulatory burdens, barrier to entry? How can we make this industry grow faster in UK?
Well, I think without wishing to blow our own trumpet too loudly, the whole point of organisations like the CMC and ACI hiring political insight is because we know how government works. We are a relatively new company, but we were founded by 6 people who are former MPs, former members of the European Parliament, former policymakers, local councillors, policy specialists. And so that's kind of what we do best, really. We know how government works. We also have 3 former Conservative MPs on our board. And so, of course, they know the current Boris Johnson administration very well as well. So we know the personalities, we know how the legislative process works, we know what works and doesn't work in terms of influence and how you do that. And so that's our expertise, really. We're very fortunate, of course, that we have the Green Shoots report, which gives us a guidance, which is such a thorough exploration of the marketplace as it currently exists and what it needs to move forward, that we can use that as a base. And as I also mentioned, we've got the Tigger report, which has already quite clearly, in a sense, promoted the benefits of the cannabinoid movement, the cannabinoid sector. So I think working in tandem, I just think the future is potentially very bright. I mean, let's be honest, I'm a former journalist as well, and clearly this is a huge interest. This isn't just a sector that is going to be a great boom to Britain. It's also a sector that is generally of interest, I think, to the general public. And I've just found, you mention it to somebody and they've got a view on it, they've got an opinion of it, they've either tried these products or they haven't. So there is interest out there as well, which is why, again, I go back to what I said right at the beginning. It is really important to have that foot in the door right at the beginning of this legislative process, so you can make sure that what happens in government is what's best for Britain and what is best for the marketplace, and that it isn't overtaken by people who have a vested interest in maybe depressing the market, or people who have some concerns about the market, and so on and so forth. So as long as we stick to hard evidence, scientific facts, can actually show the benefits, not just in terms of health, but in terms of the benefit to agriculture, to the economy. I mean, talking about the economy, COVID has left us with a massive black hole. It's left the Treasury with a massive black hole. Why wouldn't the government want to look to plug that by actually taking on board a safe, legal, regulated, multi-million pound industry? It's a no-brainer, I think.
It really is.
I agree. I think the cannabinoid market is really dynamic, and we need to have an economically competitive market, because at the moment, UK's the regulatory situation, the legal situation is not giving us a competitive advantage as compared to the rest of the countries. In order to have that, we need to have that opportunity, what has been presented to us in the health sector, in the medicinal sector. In order to fulfill these opportunities, we need to have a reform, as the Tigger report mentioned, in the regulatory reforms. We need that sort of information and a body who can actually, a one-stop body where we can go for all those challenges and discuss and get the resolution. So it's the industry and the government working together to unravel any of the challenges for the innovation and for the growth of this industry. With that, I would like to take some questions. Because of interest of time, I'm going to take some questions, and we have questions already coming through. The first question we have is, as a patient for full cannabis, more education is needed for both political and within the medical community too. I would love to help in any way I can. I was really boring chap and droned on at 2 p.m. on here. I would love to help to show how beneficial the medicine is, and there does a need to be for the body, unless patients more as well as more wants to know the effects are on how beneficial it is. So I think effectively Xavier Clark is saying that he's been a patient, he's been taking the full cannabis and has seen the beneficial effects, and he would like to have those discussions with the government, with the industry body, to say how beneficial is that.
Yeah.
Would you like to comment on that, Suzanne?
Well, I guess my question would be, this would be more towards Suzanne. If there are people who are interested in, wanting to get their story out, I guess maybe just be a testimonial to the efficacy and the effects, how would that person be able to plug into, your group, or would APPG be able to help? How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. That was the first thought that came to my mind. I mean, as I said earlier, the APPG, anyone can attend. Well, I can't say, I suppose, universally, but every APG that I've ever attended, there's always been a chance for the members of the public to ask questions and to give their own testimony. And after all, that's really what an APPG is all about. It's about liaising. It's kind of like a step between Parliament and the general public and the issues that are affecting people on a day-to-day basis. And so, of course, an important part of this is going to be first-person testimonials. That's always going to be of interest, particularly to members of Parliament and politicians who, of course, that's their job, to listen to their constituents, to listen to individuals, to take note of what people think and what people have to say.
Thank you. Next question is an anonymous attendee. Where do you feel the CBD and cannabis industry will be in 5 years' time?
Well, is it this deja vu?
Yeah.
So everyone wants to know where we're going to be in 5 years. And, I've mentioned this before, but I think it's very difficult for any of us to definitively say where it will be in 5 years. From an American standpoint, you can look at the example that was put forth ahead of us. So, obviously America did things, in my opinion, a bit more wild than they should have. So the floodgates were opened, and now they're trying to infuse regulation and infuse standardization to kind of bring back some of the products that can be harmful for the market and some of the players that are skirting compliance. So I think watching what happened there and the big boom, we call it the green rush, and how the growth just exploded essentially overnight. I definitely think that you'll see that in the UK in the next 5 years. You'll see the growth exponentially just blow up as we understand this market, as we start to understand the regulations that we're going to be drafting and framing for this sector. That's going to, it's going to ensure patient safety with the product. It's going to ensure compliant producers in the market. It's going to ensure that there's a fair market share for those producers. And then it's going to ensure at the government level that we're actually creating an industry that is profiting our economy. So we're, like you said, Suzanne, that's just such a great point about COVID and how COVID has financially impacted the world. This is our chance. This is our opportunity to really take a product and turn it into that profitable industry, to plug that hole and really fix what COVID has damaged and push this forward.
Certainly novel food application will certainly help us in road to compliance. I've got another question here from anonymous attendee saying that, what would you advise to be somebody who is looking to experiment with CBD and cannabis for particular ailment, but put off by the stigma?
Well, I would think that's to me, Suzanne.
I think so.
So I would say, you know, as a patient myself, I've been a patient over in America, in the States, and you know, there is that stigma. I was that person, you know, I didn't ever consume cannabis growing up. It was something that I knew was a huge no-no. Essentially, it will kill your brain cells, you know, all the different things that were put out. I became a believer when I suffered with postpartum anxiety, and CBD was particularly helpful for me with that. Full cannabis had its place as well with pain and different things that I was mitigating. But I would say for someone who has a negative outlook on it, number one, you're going to have to change your perspective, do some more research, do some more educational things to understand what cannabis is. And then I would say to definitely microdose. Do not just jump into an oil or flour or edibles or whatever that product is, just willy-nilly. You want to make sure that you understand the form factors, the delivery methods, how long it will take with effectiveness. So for instance, if you're consuming through inhalation, you'll see a quicker effect, but it will last shorter. Versus with edibles going through the digestive tract, you'll see a longer time that it takes to take effect, but those effects will last a bit longer. So it just depends on what exactly you're looking for. And I always say to experiment and make sure you're doing it at a very micro level and building up to the dose that you think you'll need. That's very important. You don't want to have an adverse experience, and every person's endocannabinoid system is individual. So that's why experimentation is so important.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Just one last question we'll take in. What are your thoughts on more and more cannabis companies being listed on the stock market? Is this an indicator for industry is growing? Suzanne, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I was reading that there's a new listing proposed, or someone this week, was it Hellenic Dynamics? Is that the company?
Yeah.
Great company. Yeah, they're proposing to list on the London Stock Exchange now. We've got this interesting situation at the moment with Philip Morris International bidding for Vectura. We've got British American Tobacco looking into the vaping market, and I think cannabis vaping is going to be something in the future as well. So I think, yeah, there is clearly interest, and I think when you get companies listing on the stock exchange and doing very well, as the ones that have already listed are, then I think that is a clear sign that the market is growing. And I think going back to the earlier question, where will the marketplace be in 5 years' time? Well, I suppose the sky's the limit in a sense. How much of it's worth 700 million now without any effort and happening purely accidentally, with the kind of effort, the political effort going in, with the economic effort going in, with the production effort going in. who knows what it could be worth in 5 years' time. But like any, that's the other wonderful thing about the stock market. You know, you get these pockets of interest that fly up from time to time. At the moment, tech companies are the new big thing. I very much suspect that this industry is going to be one of the next big things too.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much, ladies. In the interest of time, I have to leave it there. I would love to continue the discussion, but time wouldn't allow me now. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much, Suzanne. And thank you for listening us. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.